Good morning. I am dipping my toes back into the practice of nonviolent communication. And I was listening to a recording of some of the principles, the teachings from the founder, Marshall Rosenberg, who's passed away. And I am not holding nonviolent communication up as a flawless system, but there was this personal experience that I had coupled with this first part of a lesson that I listened to that felt really important to share, particularly now. I guess it's always been absolutely fundamentally important that we communicate with one another in a loving way, in a way that doesn't create more violence. But I think we are headed towards more volatility because of how much uncertainty we're facing collectively. So Elia would like to say hi. Okay. So I had an interaction recently that I'll just use as an example because it's been sort of like just very potent learning for me. I was sharing an article written in The Atlantic about the unbelievable increase in frenotomies, which is a surgical procedure. It's really quick, often, used on infants for what's called a tongue tie. And that's not really the point here. So as part of my sharing this article, I just posed some questions that I thought relevant, like, what are the long-term consequences of relying so heavily without investigation of other methods of care on surgical interventions like cesarean birth, which is so increasingly common and just relied upon really heavily as the safest way of birthing in certain situations, in inductions, fertility treatments. And I'm not saying there's anything inherently wrong with these methods, but more just posing the question like, are they categorically safe? Is that something that we're all buying into? And what happens when we just decide that's so, rather than, as I said, investigating other methods that have more to do, more holistic methods is all I mean. At least as a first course of action. And that specific piece of the message elicited a response from someone that, a couple of back and forth moments later, which on Facebook is usually never a good thing, although I did have some pretty productive dialogues on this thread. But this initial response led to you shame and judge women for not having the perfect birth. And I hope you'll take what I've said into consideration because I asked for a conversation. This person I know quite well. I asked for a phone call. And they said, I've said what I needed to say. I hope you'll take it into consideration. So effectively, no, I don't want to talk about this. And in this case, it's not about being right or wrong, and this is where the nonviolent communication comes in. It's more that sort of, I don't like what you're saying, and so I'm not going to listen to you. I'm certainly guilty of it. We all are. I don't like what you're saying, and maybe the instinct is I don't have the capacity to be in this difficult conversation. I feel unsafe. The fear is, so many things. I'm going to be rejected. I'm going to feel abandoned. You're going to accuse me of something. We do violence with our words. And so this initial piece of the nonviolent communication teaching that I listened to that was so crucial was sharing our feelings or coming from a place of observation of an action or an event as opposed to evaluation. I've been thinking about this kind of obsessively because, as I said, I know this person really well. We're actually family. So it is much more, I'm very invested in being able to have a conversation with them. And the example given of the difference between evaluation and observation was an administrator talking about a teacher's behavior. An administrator speaking to this nonviolent communication practitioner saying one of his teachers is selfish and has no consideration for the rules. And so the practitioner said, well, what does she do? Well, she thinks she doesn't have to follow the rules. But what does she do? And, the example goes on to say, like, it took this administrator a really long time to get to the point, which was this teacher leads classes outside in plain view of the other teachers and students, and it's distracting. So can you hear already, like, the huge difference in this administrator giving feedback to a teacher? You're disrespectful, versus when you lead your lessons outside in plain view of the other classes, it's very distracting. So I really tried to hear what was being said to me, because what was said to me was, you're shaming women and you're being judgmental, which is like the opposite of what I would ever want to do. My entire mission on this planet, in this body, is the opposite of that. So really tried to hear what was being communicated and observe myself and how that could be interpreted. And I came to something like, imagining this person talking to me. When you question the validity or the value of a cesarean birth, an induction, or fertility treatment, you undermine those women for whom that was the best choice. And that I get. I get. And it makes me want to cry. So I just offer this as, an invitation, maybe an enticement to learning a little bit more about nonviolent communication. Just look it up. There's tons of YouTube videos. I found some of the founders' recorded teachings on Spotify. Not great audio quality, but nonetheless really, really helpful. I listened to 15 minutes of a lesson. So if you have the time, I highly recommend it. There's really good information about being with anger and what anger is. Getting a bottle out of baby's reach. And I'd love to hear your thoughts, comments on this. Thanks.